Welcome back. Here you heard oral arguments, if you will, in the employee discrimination case surrounding Abercrombie and Fitch. And let's now head over to the control room. We asked to play jury here, guys. All right, so who made the more compelling argument? And Ralph in the distance, what does he say? Look at Jimmy. Jimmy nodding along so knowingly.
I knew he was brilliant.
Well, thank you, Ralph Coverdell and the control room. They rule here. And next week.
He's the heavy. Look at him. You bring this guy in, and he's the hatchet.
These two guys will take a shot at it next week. But let's switch gears now to a huge case in New York here, where the former Assembly Speaker, Shelley Silver, has been arraigned on federal corruption charges. That much you know. He's accused of orchestrating two schemes which authorities say allowed him to earn $4 million here in payoffs and kickbacks over a 15-year period. Silver, he's facing charges including extortion, mail fraud, wire fraud, each of them carrying a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison. He's pleading not guilty to all charges, and Tuesday, Silver's attorneys, they accused the U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara of being a press-hungry prosecutor. Imagine that. They also say the media frenzy surrounding Silver has ruined his chances of a fair trial. This is what Silver's attorney, Stephen Mola, had to say. Quote, the U.S. Attorney excoriated the defendant and basically deprived him of the presumption of innocence. All right, Mayo, help me out here because there's two claims. We'll do this in two parts. One is media attention. You've been in a lot of high-profile cases, both as a prosecutor and as a defense attorney, where there's been a lot of coverage around a case. Obviously, some cases are going to be covered because they're very newsworthy here, to the point that there's no chance that you can find a jury of your peers that'll give you a fair shake because they haven't already been corrupted by the media coverage of it. How hard is it, first of all, for that to happen, to get either a change of venue or to get the case dismissed? Or secondly, what is the standard?
It seems, my experience at least, has been that when it's an individual that's trying to get the case for a change of venue, it's much more difficult than it is when the government wants to change venue. So, or if you happen to have government officials, members of law enforcement, things like that, it's much easier for them to get a change of venue than it would be if one of us was to get arrested. It's a very difficult burden. Normally what happens is you'll have a voir dire of the prospective jurors, and they'll be asked if they've heard anything about the case. And remarkably, you'll have 100 people and nobody knows anything about the case, even though it's on the news all day long, every day.
That was my next question. Is it 100 people that really don't know or say they don't know?
I tend to think that.
And do you want somebody who doesn't know about it? I mean, where are they, living under a rock?
Well, that's a good question. But what you do want is you want an honest juror. So I'd much rather have the juror say, yeah, you know, we saw the news clips, and at least have that person be questioned about it. And if they can honestly say, listen, it's a news story, but none of the facts have been heard, which is generally the truth, because at the time that the statements are made, discovery's still going on, people are still learning about the case. If they can keep an open mind, I usually don't have an issue with having those people on my jury. And but I do want the honesty. I don't want someone who comes in and tells me, oh, I'm on the jury of the O.J. Simpson case, and I don't know anything about it. I never heard about it, and I go home, I don't talk to my family about it. Well, that's kind of difficult to believe. And you go to work, you live in the world with everybody else. It's hard to believe that you have no information about it. So,
are those the jurors that scare you the most?
Yeah.
The ones that you have no idea, that they don't follow anything? I mean, the idea that somebody hasn't heard of Shelley Silver would scare me because I don't know who I'm dealing with.
There's no hard and fast rule for jury selection, but as a defense lawyer, you generally want any kind of wild card, any kind of weirdo, any kind of monkey wrench you can throw into the case. So when we tried Junior Gotti's first case, we had some seemingly very bizarre people, including apparent shut-ins, and that was just fine for us. Not in every case. I mean,
but Jimmy, the second part to this is Preet Bharara.
Right.
And the contention, and it's not shared only by the defense attorney, is that the U.S. attorney in presenting his case didn't lay it out as a normal prosecutor would. There was theatrics with it. He closed with a stay tuned. The language he used to describe it, his description of Albany, it seemed to go beyond where at least we're used to. We loved it for the news folks here. It was entertaining. It was a compelling press conference. But is there an argument, if you're Silver, to say, oh, wait a minute, we're dealing with somebody who's already convicted us in the press here. My guy can't get a fair shot?
You can say that. It's not getting you anywhere. And it's certainly not getting you anywhere now. And let me tell you something. 6 months down the road, there'll be a different thing that's in the news, and he'll get a fair trial. I believe he'll get a fair trial. And Mr. Bahara is certainly far more press hungry than some of the other United States attorneys, although, you know, Rudolph Giuliani, you know, makes him look like he doesn't ever step out of his office. But, you know, there's more here. I mean, you know, the whole Moreland Commission, it's taking it away from Governor Cuomo. It's the attacks on Cuomo and why he ended it the way he ended it. And now this is seemingly coming out of it. But in terms of a change of venue or overly prejudicial, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, you make
Mark
a
was
good
saying
point.
before.
I mean, if I'm the defense in this case, you understand why they're making the motion. It has zero chance of winning. But I want it here so that I can try to nullify, you know, get the jury to think it's a politically motivated prosecution. I want to put all this stuff before the jury, and I want them to.
And you'll find
there's
receptive
an
jurors.
anti-government
Well, you're
movement.
also
You'll
setting up
find
your
receptive
appeal
jurors.
because if something comes out during deliberation, you can argue, look, you know what, we knew this was going to happen all along. So you're never hurting yourself by making that motion.
You're right.
If we've talked about judicial elections and whether or not that's really the right way to put the men and women in the robes behind the bench here. Well, if you're a fan of John Oliver's show on HBO, he did a terrific stand-up. I'll play a couple clips from it, but you have to see to believe what's going on in certain parts of this country. And then I'll ask the table, is that really the best way we want the most important person in the courtroom here to get behind that bench? Stay with us.